All right, this is Jenny White with Restore Oklahoma Public Education, and I'm sitting here with renowned history scholar David Barton. And I thought we'd just have a chat tonight about Common Core and your thoughts about Common Core and just anything kind of general that pops into your mind that you think parents particularly ought to know about Common Core. So let me just start out by asking you kind of what are some general thoughts about the Common Core?
Well, when you look at it generally, you need to know what it is and what it's trying to do. There is an appeal for Common Core in a lot of areas. For example, I talked to some folks recently in several states, southern and midwestern states and western states, and they say, you know, the Fordham Institute is considered the gold standard on rating the standards of states. I think that's nonsense, but that's what they consider gold standard. And they said, you know, the Fordham Institute has rated Common Core as B standards, and our state has C standards, so we think we can improve academic rigor if we can get some better standards. And there's only 7 states in the United States that Fordham ranks as having A standards, so 43 states have what are considered to be inferior standards. You see the results, international testing, you see what has happened with America consistently coming in dead last or almost dead last or right in the bottom on all this academic testing. And so there's a lot of push. We're spending money like crazy. We're not getting our money's worth out of what we're getting. Last stat I saw was about 85–89% of parents don't feel like they're getting the money's worth for what they are spending, and we keep hearing more money, more money. So they're looking for other ways to do things, and Common Core has some appeal because of that. Common Core also has appeal because it was sold as not being a federal curriculum. It was the State Governors Association that decided to do this, so it's not federal curriculum. It may not be, but if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, sounds like a duck, looks like a duck, I'm going to call it a duck. It's not federal technically, but it is a national curriculum. And one of the ways you can tell is that the feds have put the carrot in front of there by saying, if you will adopt Common Core, we'll give you extra educational money over here in the federal level. We'll exempt you from certain provisions, No Child Left Behind. We'll give you all these federal waivers if you'll do Common Core. Now, if it was purely a state initiative, feds wouldn't care a thing about it, they'd stay out of it, but they're offering federal money if you'll take this state initiative. That's not good. So you can't technically call Common Core a federal initiative, but you can call it a national initiative.
Let me ask you a question about that on that particular level. What is the danger of having a national curriculum?
Well, hang on to that question for a minute. We'll come back to national in a moment because that's one of the downsides to this. One of the other things that you get with the problem of this national thing is that the governors agreed to this thing before there was ever a single standard written. And so you've got governors out there pushing it as a great deal. No, when that agreement was made, there has not been a single standard written at any point in time. So there's several problems with this. There's also some other problems that go with it. Some of the early states, about 3 years now, this has been out in some way, shape, fashion, form. Some of the earliest states to adopt Common Core seeking to get rigorous standards. Their testing is in over those 3 results, and their student scores have plummeted. They've gone exactly the other direction. So you have a real difficulty here. It is not a rigorous curriculum. It's an untested curriculum. It has not been tried, and so we've been promised that, oh, if you do this, you'll get great results. Well, you're making claims without ever having tried it. So there's, you know, that sounds like the patent medicine shows out of the 1880s and 1890s. Is this will cure
snake oil?
Snake oil. And if it doesn't cure the stuff, it's not going to cure. So that's a problem that goes with it. One of the difficulties that come from it being at a national curriculum level is now illustrated by a number of states. There are, at this point, 5 states who have rejected Common Core, or put it on hold anyway, put it on pause. And within those states, I was talking to one of the state legislators that recently just rejected Common Core. He said, we got it from our state superintendent of education, who told us very bluntly, if you adopt Common Core, and if there's a standard in there that we as a state totally object to, you have no option. You have to teach it anyway. You do not have local controls. We found out from another state who dealt with the Department of Education on this, that if you have an objection to anything in there, or you're wondering why it's been done, you do not ask your teacher, you do not ask your school board, your principal, or your state. You call the Federal Department of Education and get explanations. So there goes local controls out the door. And by the way, there are 8 groups that will be adversely affected by Common Core, not the least of which is teachers themselves. Because teachers no longer are the ones who interface with the parents on this stuff. You have to go to the federal level to interface. Teachers won't like it either because it's got really high stakes testing. And teachers don't like high stakes testing by and large. This is really high stakes testing. If you bust this test, it's shot. And so, teachers don't like high stake testing when it goes to merit teachers or merit pay or anything else. They won't like this because this is high stakes testing. They won't like it because of the way that it is so poorly constructed for special needs kids. So special needs kids are going to be put on the chopping block because of the way this is handled. So it's untested, it's untried. It's kind of like the Affordable Health Care Act. The more they roll out, the more you find not to like in this thing. And that's where Common Core is right now. It is interesting that these guys were so convinced that everybody was going to buy this wonderful panacea that they were unprepared for any criticisms, and so they're getting plastered now, and they don't know how to respond back. Their only response is, well, that's those radical people on the right. They don't know what they're talking about. We're educated. We're professionals. So they don't have scores. They don't have testing. They can't answer the local control stuff. It's a big problem. The other problem that is, well, there's about 5 major problems that should be a concern to any parent, but the data mining that goes with this is a real major problem. In San Antonio, they've already installed the iris scanning machines for students, and parents go, whoa, wait, why do you need iris scanning? Well, in San Antonio, they've gone further. They said, for the safety of your kids, we want to make sure that ever since my kid's been born, I've never had trouble confusing him with anybody else. He's always looked like my kid to me. Why do I need iris scanning? For the safety of your kid. And so part of what they've done is they've gotten into this thing of saying, well, for the safety of your kids, we want to make sure nobody's taking them off campus. So we're not going to have your kids wear cards with ID chips in them no matter where they go. And so we've had young girls object. Every time I go in the bathroom, they know where I am. They know everywhere. I don't want that invasion of my privacy. It's for your safety. It's for your protection. And so she objected to wearing that, went to a civil rights lawsuit. What the school did to punish her for refusing to be tracked everywhere she went on campus. And it's the Napoleonic approach that you're guilty until proven innocent. Yeah. Instead of saying innocent until proven guilty, we're going to assume that you're going to be kidnapped, that you're going to leave campus, you're going to do something wrong, and we're going to make you prove to us you don't leave campus. No. That's not the way we do things here in America. Well, that card is so inconvenient. The kids might switch cards. Let's just kind of embed it under the skin because then we can track them. Sorry, I don't like where this is headed. And now that's just part of the management of seeing where the kids are. But the kind of questions they're asking for Common Core, why do you care what my religious affiliation is? Why do you care how many other kids I've gotten home? Why do you care whether I'm considered conservative, liberal, libertarian, moderate, anything? Well, if we know, we can tailor education to fit. See, if we know that you're a Catholic family and you're considered a conservative Catholic, we can tailor education to better. No, I don't want the government having all that. So we're into all sorts of intrusive data collection. And their line is, but you can trust the federal government. Is that the same government that has the IRS that has just done? Is that the same government with the NSA stuff that we're now finding out? That's the one I can trust? See, conservatives have a healthy distrust of government, not because they don't like government. We think government is absolutely necessary. I think it's a biblical mandate. I think it's a constitutional mandate. I think there's a law of nature that mandates association of government. Absolutely necessary. But knowing what I know about the depravity of man, I know that power corrupts. And so I don't trust government with more power I give them. So I do believe in parental controls and local controls. I much more trust teachers than I do bureaucrats in the Department of Education, Washington, D.C. So that's some of the concerns that are out there that have to be dealt with, that have not been dealt with. And the more that comes out, it's really bad. And then as you get into the content of the standards, you find it's heavy indoctrination. For example, in the math area, they tell you what math things to teach, but they only give you a single example. And the math you have to calculate deals with global warming. We haven't had global warming in 16 years. So why are we indoctrinating kids with a view of anthropogenic global warming? Now, global warming occurs. We haven't had it in 16 years. But anthropogenic, that hadn't been proved at all. Not by anthropogenic means man-caused global warming. I mean, we got cycles, you bet. That's why we have averages. That's why in Texas we go from summers to 70 degrees and summers 120 degrees. I mean, it's averages. So you look at the examples they use to illustrate their content, and whether it's in the science standards, whether it's in the math standards, or the language arts standard, whatever they're doing, the examples tend to be very far left. And even in the literature area where they want you to read, half of it is classical literature, but half of it is contemporary things like executive orders of the president. Really? And that means as much as Moby Dick, and that means maybe as much as Last of the Mohicans and Pilgrim's Progress. And no, you need. And so the selections of what they have the kids doing clearly screams indoctrination. It absolutely screams indoctrination. It's not like choose something contemporary. It's like choose these contemporary things. So indoctrination is another problem that goes with this. So there are a lot of problems. Cost is another one. This is an unfunded federal mandate. Because see, Common Core, all the kids are going to have iPads. Now we got schools screaming they can't afford crayons for kids. Tell me you can afford an iPad for every kid, and who do you think is going to pay for that? That's coming more from us. So there's the unfunded mandate of this side. I mean, I can just keep going through problems that keep coming up. But on the surface, they keep saying, oh, this is good stuff. I was just talking to one state in the Midwest that's saying, you know, we really are under pressure because there's these 7 states that have the A standards, and Common Core is B, we're a C state. Our legislature's saying, well, let's at least move up to B, and it's a time out. If you want to do something, why don't you choose one of the 7 A standards? Texas has A standards. Why choose a B when you can choose an A? Take the Texas standards instead of the Common Core standards, because that's at least a step in the right direction, and you don't get the indoctrination. I know, because I helped write the Texas standards. I was one of the 6 guys that was the expert reviewers on that thing, who helped put that together. I know what we got in there, and it's not indoctrination. It is a lot of Constitution, it is a lot of history, it is a lot of faith, it's a lot of things that people believe in by a huge majority of numbers, polling-wise, which is not in Common Core. So choose any of the 7 states that are A rather than choose a B standard. If the pressure is to move your state up to the A standard, don't stop at a B, go for an A. So there's a lot of ways to respond to what's out there, and I think that Common Core is in serious trouble. Not only have we had 5 states say we don't want to be part of this next year we'll have 11 states vote on it. And the fact that many states are even voting on whether to take federal money or voting whether to be part of the program tells you they're getting a lot of pressure.
Well, and there's pushback in just about every state. I think that I know of
and
right
now.
And
it's not organized.
It's just a
parents,
grassroots.
It's parents popping up and saying,
Correct.
whoa, we've looked at this. This is not a good deal. And so that's healthy. And if we can get all those groups together, this is an unstoppable train coming down the track. Because to have that much pressure coming from people who are just doing it because of what they themselves read and what they themselves see and care about, and that's good stuff.
Well, you know, you're kind of moving this direction, so let me take a second to ask you here now. We have been working on this in Oklahoma since 2010, and we are always confronted by people who say, but I don't know what to do. I mean, what are we supposed to do about this? I do think that there is a solution to the problem, you know, other than pitchforks and torches, which we're moving toward that direction, I think, quickly. But what do you consider to be, you know, some of the things that in states, and particularly in Oklahoma, we could do to kind of push back against this initiative?
I think there's several things that can be done. They all deal with education of some sort, and they all deal with voicing what you learn. Because most school districts don't know what Common Core is. They hear from mad parents, and mad parents come in mad, and a lot of times don't come with information. And a lot of the ways you change this is relationally. You got school board members, and you say, hey, have you seen this little 2-page white paper? Don't give them a 25-page thesis. Give them a 2-page white paper. Say, have you thought about all these things with Common Core? Do you know that you guys will lose all of your parents will have to bypass you to get stuff? It's no longer coming to the local school district. They'll have to go to Washington, D.C. No, I didn't know that. Did you know that you're going to have to fund iPads for all that? We're going to come up with the money for that. You start giving them stuff like that, and these guys on their own will say, hey, this is not all it was cracked up to be. They told us that there was a golden pot at the end of this rainbow. We didn't know we had to go through all these tornadoes to get there. And that's the problem they've got, is they've been told that there's this great benefit, but they didn't see all this other. So start creating relationships with school board members. With those and don't get angry at them. I mean, by and large, most of them don't know what this is all about. They hear some clutter around, and the educrats will tell you one thing, and that's who they hear most of the time. So parents need to create some nice relationships with them. Say, got some short papers. I got a little YouTube clip. I got this great clip on what math is going to look like if we get the Common Core. You will not believe what's going to happen to traditional math. And when most school board members see that, they'll say, well, we don't want our kids being taught that. There's no way that we'll have rigorous standards if we do this. So that's one thing. Another thing is you start talking to your state legislators and say, you know, we don't need to be part of this. Do you understand the unfunded federal mandate this is? Do you understand that this is more federal strings attached, that you guys will lose any voice, that the state legislature is out, it goes straight to the federal Department of Education? Start doing that, and it threatens the position of state legislators. Now, again, there will be a lot of lobbyists at the state capitol for the educrats. And I don't call them educators, I call them educrats, because they literally are. If I can talk Texas here for a little bit, we had in our state a measure where we were going to spend we were going to require schools to take 65 cents out of every education dollar and spend it in the classroom. And a lot of people said, why just 65? Why not 75 or 80? But that was defeated in Texas, a conservative state, because we found out that in school districts like Dallas and San Antonio and Fort Worth and large cities, there was one administrator for every teacher, 1-to-1 ratio, administrators to teachers. Now, if you put 65 cents in the classroom, you're going to have to get rid of about half those administrators, because then you got a 2-to-1 ratio. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And then those guys, they will take a day off in the middle of school on state dollars and go to the legislature to lobby legislators on why you don't want to do this. This is a bad deal. So we're actually paying our school administrators to go lobby against us with our own dollars, which is why Texas introduced a bill that said you can't use state-funded positions to lobby. But nonetheless, that's what you're going to find here. You're going to have educrats, you're going to have guys who have only been told one side of the story. They're going to be working on legislators. So you can't get mad at legislators either. You got to understand Proverbs 18:17 says one side sounds good until somebody tells the rest of the story. You got to understand they got professional lobbyists who are really good at what they do, who will keep these legislators informed. You got to come in cogently on the other side with some good arguments. Bible says a soft answer breaks the most bone-like resistance. Be humble, be intrigued to say, you may not have seen this. I got a YouTube clip for you here. I got a white paper. I've got the Fordham results. You know, we don't need to stop at B standards. We need to go to A standards. Choose one of these 7 states. Let's go there. There's so many arguments you can make. The other thing I'll say is you got to understand you can make a difference. And I say that in the sense that I deal with about 120 federal legislators on a very regular basis. They're very good friends. Between 700 and 800 state legislators we deal with on a regular basis. And I ask periodically, like the federal legislators, I say, how many contacts do you get on a typical issue? And they say, typical, usually 5 or 10. They said, if we get 25 to 50, we know people are really ticked off over something. Hey, a Sunday school class can terrorize a congressman. You know, you get 25 people to contact. And so think what it is for a state legislator. It's a whole lot less. And so unless it's been something that's nationally publicized, if it's just swelling from the grassroots up, if they get 8 or 10 or 12 contacts or calls or emails, and again, don't get mad at them and cuss them out and say, hey, you may not have considered this, but you need to know that if you get Common Core, you're going to get federal strings, you're going to lose local controls, it's an unfunded mandate. The data mining, the intrusion is unconscionable for anyone who believes in the Bill of Rights. That kind of stuff, and it does not take many folks to convince legislators this is a big deal. And once you get legislators to start asking questions, they will tell their staff, go out and find out what this fight's all about. And as they get out there, they'll find we've got 10 or 12 great websites nationally on Common Core with lots of information. And those legislators will start finding that. The staffers will start getting that for them. So I think there's a lot of things we can do. It's a matter of hanging in there and being civil and being kind with it. And if you can't get them to change, great. Run for school board yourself, get yourself elected, run for state legislature, get people in who will do the right thing. But start relationally first. Build relationships and give them information will make a difference.
That's, you know, we have home, I don't know if you know this about Oklahoma, but Oklahoma is one of the most liberal states in all of the country for homeschool laws, and we have excellent homeschool here. So much so that we have people that come in from other states because they have such a great freedom. Yeah, exactly. Right. To home educate
That's
here.
Right.
We also believe that the Common Core is actually going to affect homeschoolers as well. Do you have any thoughts on that issue?
Part of it is going to come from the data mining. The data mining will have an impact. See, it's going to affect parochial schools, private schools, and homeschools because particularly as money becomes available, and choice will make that money available, and it should be, The Supreme Court has actually held a great choice program in Arizona, but 24 states have now moved to some degree of school choice that includes parochial schools, private schools, home schools, etc. We collect state funds to have kids educated. We don't say where until the last 40 years. Well, it's got to be in a secular education system. Why? If I can back up to California for a minute, when initially their Supreme Court struck down homeschooling in California 5 years ago, I believe it was 5 years ago, they said, hey, unless you have a certified teaching degree, you can't homeschool your kids. Well, only 9% of homeschool parents had certified teaching degrees. But what we found was those homeschool kids, 91% of them without certified teaching degrees, were averaging 2 to 4 grade levels higher on academic knowledge than the kids coming out of certified public school teacher degrees. It looks to me like you need uncertified teachers teaching, and then you get 2 to 4 grade levels higher. So if the state's concerned about having educated citizens, they don't care what venue they come from, but suddenly we've said, oh, you can't have any money unless it's secular only. Even though we get 2 to 4 grade levels higher over here, and even though we're spending about $12,000 a year in public schools and you're spending about $750 a year in homeschool, we can't afford to do $750. We're going to keep doing $12,000 a year and have 2 to 4 grade level lower results than you do. It doesn't even make sense. And so, but to go back to your question, yes, it does have an impact on homeschoolers and parochial schoolers and Christian schoolers, particularly as more choice programs come through, like the Supreme Court has upheld, that allows the dollars to be distributed. The data mining requirements, the loss of parental rights that goes with it, the transfer of supervision elsewhere, and the whole mindset creates a hostile environment toward people that are not part of that Common Core system. And so you really find that even though we have great protections against NSA, we're finding people saying, well, what's wrong with the NSA? They're keeping us safe. No, you don't give up your liberty for safety. And it's the same thing. A lot of times you'll find state laws that provide a lot of freedom infringed simply because people think this is such a good deal that we need to intrude into you and get certain information from you. And that's a hard thing to overcome when people make up their mind that it's good for you.
Well, David Barton, we really appreciate the time you've taken to talk to us about this today, and thank you for all of your insight and wealth of knowledge on the topic. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Happy to help.